I'm Marcia Lehman, and I'm a Knox County Master Gardener. Today we're going to be pruning a rhododendron. Rhododendrons really need very little pruning. They should be deadheaded after all the flowers are spent, so we'll be doing that today. And in fact, while we're talking about the spent blossoms, this structure that held the blossom is called a truss. And there's a particular way that you remove it right at the base of that truss. That's a very specific form of deadheading. The rhodies should be deadheaded after they have bloomed, but want to introduce you to the term truss because I don't know that it's used on any other shrub, but it has to do with the nature of the flower. So deadheading and cutting off the truss is one thing you do. And the second is they really don't need a lot of pruning except to get rid of any of the 4Ds, the dead, diseased, damaged, and dysfunctional. And there is some dead wood on here that will come in, but as far as airflow goes, this shrub doesn't need any thinning, just needs a little cleaning up of some dead wood inside. So let me put down my clipboard and let's just zoom in on some of these spent flowers. If I take this one, you can see this structure where the blossoms were, and the way that we prune that is that we come right to the base of it, and at the base you see a set of leaves, which is called a whorl, W-H-O-R-L, and we snip it right at the base of the truss and above the whorl. So that's how we deadhead a rhododendron. So we're going to pause the camera and we're going to do a whole bunch of pruning of, we're going to do a whole bunch of deadheading. And once we get this, a section of it cleaned up, we'll come back and move on into the interior where we will be removing some of the dead wood. So let me just snip a few more. We always come in, we'll get a good close-up here. Here's the truss, and I like to just kind of grab that in my fingertips and pull it together so that I can see just below the truss and just above this whorl of leaves, and that's where I make the snip. So again, it's a spring bloomer, so we do all this work after the flowers are spent. There is another term called debudding, which this shrub does not need and most folks don't need. But in that case, if you're trying to reshape it, you would come in and, for instance, here you can see there's a new set of leaves, a new whorl, and if I wanted to shape it, then I would take that back to the next set of leaves. But again, unless you're doing a major reshaping, you don't need to do debudding. But those are some terms that are used specifically with rhododendrons. So we're going to stop the camera. We're going to deadhead a bunch more of these trusses, and then we'll move into the center of the plant. We have finished cleaning off all the spent flowers in this section. There's still some on the side and the back, and obviously higher than I am tall. But you may be wondering what happens if you don't do this. Well, the biggest thing is in our home landscapes, those spent flowers don't look very nice. So we're removing them to keep the plant looking appealing to us. But in a natural setting, out in the woods or in a forest, obviously nobody's going to go and remove the spent flowers. And what will happen is the new buds coming out will over time push off the old truss, and nature will take care of it. But in our home landscapes, we are concerned with things always looking nice. So having done that, now we're going to adjust and move inside and start to clean up what is mostly dead wood. As I mentioned earlier, this does not need work for thinning and airflow, but there is some dead wood in here that needs to be cleaned up. As with most shrubs, I like to come in and start at the base, and here's an old dead, maybe an old pruning cut, I don't know, could be just a broken branch. So we'll take that off. Here you can see this is clearly dead, so I can reach around here and take that off. This branch comes out and actually does have some live growth on it, but this one above it has no live growth. So we'll take that off. And this one is dead. Crunch. And a lot of times you can just break these with your fingers, the smaller ones in particular. And so we'll just go through, and what I'm looking for is the dead, but if I come across anything that's rubbing, crossing, well then we'll fix that too. But right now, this is just cleaning up dead. This is in front of me. Yep, let's take that off there. And then we have some live out here, but this side is all dead, so we'll take that off. And I'll look up, that's dead. And this one is dead. This one looks dead. This is dead. This is little dead. That's got some green on the end. That's one of the things, you know, be careful. Every now and then I've been known to snip something that looks dead, and sure enough out there at the end is something green. So that one's still good, but here's a little dead sprig. We'll come down below here, a little dead sprig. That's dead. That's got green on it, but here's one that is dead. Here's a little one that'll break with the fingertips. And so that's what we're going to do. We're just going to spend some time inside the shrub here, cleaning up any dead branches. So here's a classic example of where this little branch came out across the top of this. And you can see we have a rubbing wound here. Now, it hasn't broken all the way through, but we had a little discussion about which branch to remove, and we're going to take the smaller one off and keep the shape. But the reason we're taking that off was because of that rubbing. And then, of course, I will grab the loppers and clean up that old pruning cut. So as we're going through looking for the dead stuff, we're also looking for rubbing, crossing branches, and that's just a really good example. Here's the pile of debris of mostly dead stuff. You'll see there's a couple pieces of green in there. One of those was a mistake on my part, and the other one was that rubbing branch that we took off. So when we come back to the shrub, we have taken off all the trusses that were within reach without having to get a step stool or a ladder. We've been in here and cleaned out dead. We shoved that rubbing branch, and then here is another one that had partial dead, one live, and you might say, well, why didn't I just cut it here? The answer, when we zoom in, I'll hold this up against my t-shirt, is that here we have some really bad damage. And so this is not a healthy branch. I can pull that apart and get just about pinch my fingers in it. And so that's not healthy. So we took it off back at a branch node. So that's the pruning of a rhododendron. It's not a ton of work. The tedious part is cutting all the trusses of the spent flowers, and then it's crawling around inside the shrub to get rid of the dead, and that's the primary thing. And then occasionally you find a crossing rubbing branch or a damaged one that, like I just showed. So it's a relatively low maintenance plant. I just found another dead. But it needs routine maintenance, and so that is deadheading those spent flowers, removing the trusses, and then crawling through and cleaning up. And as you can see right through this shrub. And so this is a healthy specimen. It would be healthy in the woods, in the native environment. It's a lovely plant to have. Take a look at the handout for where it really likes to grow and where it will thrive. We hope you learned something today, and we thank you for joining us.